So, welcome to another iteration of HR Masters Wine and Wisdom. I'm Michele Synegal of Management Dynamics Inc. And my colleague is, introduce yourself if you would.
My name is Monica Simpson, calling in from Atlanta, Georgia.
Ooh,
And I am a career strategist, facilitator, and coach, and I'm under the umbrella of the Alliance HR Consulting Services.
excellent.
Yes.
Thank you. And my other colleague is,
Hi, I'm Jody Friend, President and CEO of JLM HR Consulting, and we're located here in Maryland. Nice to see you, Monica. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Jody and Michelle.
you're so welcome. So, our topic today, you all, is about change, but we're going to focus in on the workforce landscape and how the past year has created more opportunities and as well as challenges. And so Monica is an expert in that space. So she's going to be sharing with us some of the trends that she has observed. So I'm going to start with a question, Monica, and that is, we're in a transitional state, meaning that many organizations are planning in the fall to return to some level of on-site work. So, what do you term that? Is it transition? What is it?
Well, Michelle, it's really interesting because I've been my ears have been in tune to what are the organizations saying it is and what is the employee saying it is. For example, I had a conversation with an employee representative and she said, we gave him the warning. And I said, gave him the warning? What was the warning? And she said, well, we communicated that we would now be moving into phases. And then I was also referencing my conversation with a friend of mine, and she said, I think we went back too soon. And too soon meant the way that they were brought back into the on-site experience. So some of what I see is the mindset that's been going on within the organization to say, we've got to get people back together and get them back to a safe environment to be productive. With this mindset, you hear the employee saying, I don't want to go back to work. I've been just fine doing what I'm doing here. Or if I have to go back, let me go back in a phase process. So, hearing words or phrases like next step, next level, so coming up with some kind of starting over, fresh new start, where do we begin is where our mindset starts with, both from the employee base as well as the organization.
Yeah, and I've been hearing a lot about reimagining work, reimagining your job. So that's something that's coming up too. And again, change does present those opportunities, and we can reimagine what we have been doing, how we might be able to do it differently. So, what are some of the trends that you're seeing, Monica?
As far as trends, I'm also in the training arena, so I get to sort of challenge some of the theories that are out there. Some of the trends I'm pushing in the career side of my business is to really stress how employees have to allow people to feel empowered and to feel empowered with their career, not to be given a job and then having a performance review every year. It is looking at how do you look across the whole year time span and look at the different types of activities that need to be included to help people to grow, so that we can start using that word accountability in the way that it's the accountability for the leadership or the organization, but also accountability for the employee to manage their career. So I'm having people starting to look at their values. I think they started to look at it when they were out in the COVID experience, working at home. I've heard people say that they've been able to teach their kids time management when they never thought that they could. So early stages of career development starts with just some awareness. And so that's what I'm starting to see is people are waking up to their own accountability of their career. So I'm saying start talking to your manager, start making sure that you're known. We don't want to see your to-do list. We want to see your progress reports. We want to understand how you're helping the organization move forward. That's how you get to be where you want to go, to be where you want to move towards, is when you start holding yourself accountable for your career, short and long term.
Mhm. So Monica, given that that's the type of conversations that you're having, um, what challenges will employers face in adopting that model?
Well, the employers are going to, again, have to look at the other parts of what they say are their strategic initiatives under the umbrella of human capital management. So, for example, if they say diversity and inclusion is important, how does that fit into what's the interest of the employee? Or if they're saying their reward system, what does that have to look like? Because, now employees, since they've had an out, it's almost like as if they've escaped and they had a level of freedom, and now they have to go back in. So the mindset has to change, which means that they've got to start looking at progressive benefits. For example, I was reading an article in Inc. magazine, it was, and they were saying some of the benefits are employees want pet care. They want a sabbatical. I remember when McDonald's corporation was the only corporation I knew of that actually had sabbaticals besides educational institutions. They want emergency fund access because things do show up. They happen, when no one's following the Dave Ramsey model. We have emergency needs, or education support, or elderly care, or student loans. So if we're saying you can do more if we provide you with more, they've got to restructure the benefits to be more inclusive. So to a diversity group, that would be one thing that I would see. Another opportunity would be, how do we create this environment of trust again? Because when we start to look at the morale, which is going to be a challenge, they're going to have some effect because people are going to have to come back. They're coming back in phases, and then we may still have some outside activities still lingering in that's impacting organizations' decisions from policies and practices. So with this trust and morale, people are going to need to feel like they have a space that they fit into. I don't know about you, but when did you feel different when you went into an organization? It's kind of easy when you're in a new job, but when you're going back to a place where you've been for 15 years and you've got to go back into it, it's going to look new and different to some extent. So how does organizations bring back and revisit the values, the vision? How do they keep them focused on the goals that are to be achieved? And then they have to start encouraging them to see their value in all of that. How do they see themselves fitting into achieving that? And that's when we say, are you badass? That's when we want you to start looking at, oh, I can be, if I start to hold myself accountable for my career. So building the skills are going to be a lot of what's going to happen, and should be emphasized both from an organization as well as a leader, as well as the employee. But the employee will play a big part. That's where I push a lot, is to convey to them, you have permission now to really ask for what you need to be successful and to thrive.
Yeah. And based on some articles that I've read recently, the workforce is stipulating what it is that they need. And I liken this whole reentry process to like when the military, you say you were military for many, many years, and then you return to civilian life. There's a transition that has to be managed. And so it's analogous to any change management process. Organizations need to be thinking in terms of that. How do we transition our folks back in a way whereby we keep them whole, while at the same time we focus on meeting the business goals and objectives? So one trend that I did read about was, and we spoke about it in our last two iterations of HR Masters Wine and Wisdom, and that was about self-care. And so what does that mean for the organization? Some of the expectations are that our well-being as workers needs to be important, not only to us, but to our employers as well. And so it's becoming a very essential expectation and part of the employee experience. So if you want your workforce to say that the engagement level is high, that productivity is high, there's got to be that balance between one's personal well-being as well as the organization's productivity. Jody, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely hitting the nail on the head there, Michelle, because and I think of when you talk about that, I think of the word flexibility, right? Flexibility, allowing employees to have a flexible work schedule if needed, because many folks are in that sandwich generation. I know a lot of us have heard that term. Folks have migrated to other states to take care of family members during this pandemic. And so they are not anticipating that they're going to return. So say, for instance, folks have moved to all kinds of places. We work with a lot of clients here in the DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And we're seeing the migration to other states, Connecticut, New York, Atlanta, because of family obligations during COVID-19. And those staff members do not plan to return to their locations that they were originally working from. So that also presents another challenge for employers as well to think about.
Yeah, and Michelle and Jody, we were talking earlier about the work anywhere mindset. And so as long as you know what the office environment looks like to you, and that means what is it going to take for you to find focus, to understand your priorities, and to be able to execute it. And as long as you're not distracted and that is concentrated time, we may see that. So I've had not only seen, it at a very young age, the generation, this new generation who's just graduated, 1920 and 2020 and 2021, having to find that space to work because they're not able to go right into a job environment. I've also seen organizations saying they're going to redesign offices so that they can now start to bring people back together and to have that spirit of collaboration or that group cohesiveness. But then also, Michelle, we were looking at those numbers of people departing from environments, whether people are going for their retirement locations and planning for that. I have a friend who was just telling me they decided to move to Florida, but not right away. But now that they can work at home, they're going to go and get themselves set up. So there's a short-term plan, there's a long-term plan. It just depends on where you fall into the area of your career. Are you an early starter in your career? Are you just, in the middle of your career, or are you in the latter part of your professional career? So that I am seeing as well.
Yeah, and so another trend is connecting the physical and the digital worlds, because now that we have experience, we have demonstrated that work can be done, that productivity can remain high, and folks are opting for more hybrid employment situations where they do get to telework and, if required, come in, but on a less frequent basis than full time. And so making that transition happen is also before employers as well.
Yes,
absolutely. I think that what I'm also seeing trend wise is that, early in the COVID, stages, folks were concerned about what's going to happen to commercial real estate. Well, I think we're always going to have it, but what I think we're going to have was we're going to probably see a resurgence in the co-working model workspace, because it does lend itself to that flexibility, to that hybrid workforce. And again, I visited one recently, And, folks can take their computers up on like a balcony and work. And, while they're in the office, they still have a space where they can go to where they're getting fresh air. It's producing an environment that is pleasing and will enable productivity because they're comfortable. Staff members are feeling safe in those types of environments. So I think we're going to start to see a resurgence in those co-working type spaces, places like we worked in, because they also offer a whole host of amenities that employers who are willing to do some leasing of office space don't have to worry about purchasing the copiers and the printers and all of those kinds, and the coffee and the water, because those things will be included. So I think that model is going to see a resurgence.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. So in closing, Monica, I'm going to defer to you. Words of wisdom to the workforce. What counsel would you give them in terms of seizing the opportunities that the COVID-19 pandemic created for folks?
Wow, it's one word that I wanted to expand on earlier, and that is to help ourselves to grow emotionally. I mean, if we think about before COVID, we couldn't even say the word emotional intelligence in the workplace, but now it's become even more critical because being flexible, adapting to change, being able to collaborate, having empathy and humility, all of that fits under the element of how do you find your whole self, and how do you find your whole self and work in a way that you feel included in an environment, in a job that you like, a role that you enjoy, being around people, and then the interpersonal skills, having that as an ability to see yourself continuing to grow and the desire to want to be your best inside of environment, and then being willing to take the risk. If this is not the place for you, go someplace else. So keeping up the networking, so skill enhancement, relationship building, and then the whole ability of risk taking. Leave a little space for yourself and the self-focus so that you're constantly moving and being where you want to be.
Thank you. And Jody, one closing question for you. What advice or counsel would you pass on to employers?
Absolutely. Keeping an open mind, being flexible, and truly embracing this new phase that we're entering into, because it does present an opportunity. And we've seen that the productivity increased while we were working at home. And so let's, continue down that path, embracing these new opportunities, as well as the new challenges that you're going to be facing. And, this is a new phase, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so thank you all so much for tuning in to another conversation with HR Masters, Wine and Wisdom. And in closing, what I want to say to employers and to the workforce, reimagine. Use your imagination to come up with new ways to meet the business goals and objectives, but also that meet more of your personal goals and objectives as well. So there needs to be that balance. It's not 50-50, but because it always shifts, but that balance between one's well-being and then of course the mission and the vision of the organization. You can accomplish both. Then you end up with a win-win. So thank you all so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.